Hi everyone, it's Lyra. I wanted to make a sort of part 2 to my voice tutorial for passing. And again, I just want to throw out the caveats. I don't think that anyone has to learn how to do this. I don't think you're like not really a girl if you aren't trying to do this. I just think that it helps some people to pass a little bit more effectively. And I think that that can be really important to help a lot of people stay safe and feel good about themselves. So given all that, I wanted to add a little bit more. Last time I gave a basic overview of the idea of what a feminine voice is in the sort of basic most sense of placement. And I also talked about the importance of drinking water. So what I want to do now is help clarify things a little bit, because what a lot of people find is that even after they find the correct placement, which is right about here with the larynx flipped up, right about here, even after you find that placement and get comfortable with using it, there's still other more subtle vocal patterns that we learn when we're trying to be men, that don't actually sound very feminine, and that we can sound more feminine if we sort of unlearn those and in their place learn other ways of approaching speaking. So the last video was sort of like how to get a girl's voice, and this one is going to be more about how to get a girl's speech. And I just want to put a quick caveat. I will make some mistakes. I'm not flawless. I don't always get every last bit of advice that I'm about to give you. I just know that it works more effectively when you do remember to do them. So let's break it down into a couple of categories here. There's sort of 3 major things that I think really make a difference. One is word choice. And I don't want to spend too much time on word choice, so we'll swing back to that in a second. I'm just going to tell you now that it's going to be relatively brief because it's so regional. The second thing is softness of voice. When you are trying to be masculine, when you're trying to have a masculine voice, you're very much taught that you should speak forcefully, have an impact, and while it's absolutely the case that girls should be able to do that too, and you should be able to do that too, when you're first learning the sort of baseline voice, it's sort of important to let that go for a bit. And it's going to feel weird. You're going to feel a little quiet. We'll talk more about that later too. So that's 2 things. We've got word choice, softness, and then there's also pitch direction. It's a question of whether you're going to move your voice up or down at certain parts in the sentence. So those are the 3 things we're going to talk about. Let me circle back to word choice really quick. Like I said, it's difficult because it's very regional, but in general, there are certain words and ways of talking about things, like logical structures and things like that, that girls are more likely to use in particular regions as opposed to boys. And even subtle things like that can actually really make a difference when you're attempting to pass. So you want to pay attention, very close attention, to what words the girls around you are using and start trying to use more of those. A few examples I can think of off the top of my head is that in general, girls swear a little less than boys do. In general. So if you've been swearing, you might want to cut back on that a little bit. The other thing is that girls often have more open-ended statements. Like, you may have noticed a number of the things that I've said so far, even though I'm making this relatively authoritative video, is they're all preceded with phrases like I think, or I believe, or maybe if. You know, things like that, things that make it a possibility, things that don't assert an absolute truth, which is very different from how most men talk about things, where they just state things as being true, just objectively. And that one I actually think is kind of a bad practice to have in general. I think I was trying to avoid that even before I realized I was trans, but it will definitely help you to sound more feminine in our current social context. But it is really regional, so pay attention, do some research, and just notice the things that girls are using more versus what boys are using more, and try to lean towards what girls are using more. So that's word choice. Then there's this question of softness. And like I was saying, there's this inclination with masculinity, and especially because us trans girls, we do have these powerful lower tones, these powerful pipes that really let us hit hard. But there are other ways to do it. They're a little bit more complicated. They won't feel quite as natural, but you can get to them. But it has to start with sort of developing this new baseline for a feminine voice. Before you get to the hard-hitting one, you have to develop a softer one. And there's a couple of ways that this works. One of the ways is just honestly, don't talk as loud. If you can control that, if you think of just letting a little bit less breath come through your speech, then it sort of softens it up a little bit, as opposed to letting some kind of full, hard stream of breath coming through, which, as I'm doing right now, demonstrates to you it makes the voice sound a little bit harder and even lowers the pitch a little bit, which you want to avoid right now. Instead, you sort of hold up on the flow a little bit, and it makes the voice softer and even sound a little breathier, even though you're actually using less breath. So this can be a difficult technique at first because it does require some breath control. You're forcing yourself to speak in a way that is not natural. So definitely practice your deep breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Make sure you really feel your diaphragm. That's the muscle in your tummy. It turns out that when you are breathing in, that should be expanding, sort of. Well, it's not actually expanding, it's lowering. And you really want to feel that muscle working. You really want to breathe with your diaphragm. Feel it going out when you breathe in and scooping back up when you breathe out. And as you begin to develop more strength with your diaphragm, and really this is just something to do whenever you are thinking about it, whenever you have time, especially at night when you're going to sleep, practice breathing. As you begin to develop that control, it becomes easier to use less breath while you're talking, and then you get a softer voice instead of a harder voice, like that. So it's also sort of a volume thing, and it gets into some complicated technicalities, which we don't need to worry about too much. For now, it's okay to be quiet. It's okay to be a little softer. It's okay to be a delicate flower. I know that doesn't necessarily appeal to everybody, but it's a worthwhile place to try to start from, I think. And then eventually, as you get comfortable in that, you can expand outward with your newly developed vocal capacities into variations on that still sound feminine. And then the last thing that leaves is vocal cadence or pitch direction. And this, honestly, is the thing that I think I personally struggle with the most. I'm getting better at it. I'm very self-conscious about it for this video, so I'm trying to do a better job with it. But basically, the idea is that you want to pitch upward on more things instead of pitching downward when you get to the end of a sentence. It's very typical for male vocal patterns to sort of gradually go downward as you speak until you get towards the end of a sentence and you're practically bottoming out. And we can't afford to do that. A lot of cis girls can get away with it, but we can't really afford to, because if we start bottoming out at the bottom of our range and losing our breath support, then we lose the falsetto flip and the voice just falls out completely. Even right there, I had to slip back up to avoid falling out completely. So I'm gonna show you a quick example of what I mean by this. Like, you might have the phrase, I hung out with my friends last night, it was cool. If you were to say it with a more male vocal cadence, it might sound like, oh yeah, I hung out with my friends last night, it was cool. And it sort of sounds a little dull even. I mean, guys often, understate their emotional reality, just sort of downplay things a little bit. You want to be emotional, you want to get into it, you want to play it up. So you wanna, yeah, and that's really what it is, playing it up. So you might say it more like this. Oh yeah, I hung out with my friends last night. It was cool. Like flip it up, push it up. And it'll sound a little cheesy at first, but I'm just sort of giving you the extreme example. This is the kind of mentality you want to have. So to go over those things really quick again, word choice. Make sure that you are trying to use words and phrases that are more like the ones that girls in your area are using. Softness, you can be a little quieter, use a little less breath, helps give you a more calming, nurturing sound. And cadence, you want to try to pitch upward towards the end of your sentences, and in general, use more higher pitches than you are used to. So that's that. Hopefully that will continue to be useful and helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.